Welcome to the Top Floor, the podcast where Charlotte area CEOs get to tell their leadership journey. My name is Jeff Cass. I'm an executive coach here in Charlotte, and I'll be your host today. I'd like to welcome Jorn Aalefjaer from Viessmann Clean Cold Solutions. Jorn, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, and thank you for trying to pronounce my name.
I'll do my best. I know it wasn't proper from Norway, but it probably was good enough for the US. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm when you're Norwegian with we have three letters you guys don't have, right? And I have them all, so it's not a very US friendly name.
Yeah. Okay. Well, how did I do? How would you rate it for the US?
I would say you did okay. It's basically where people it's what they say. They get basically panic in their eyes when I say my name, and then I say just say Jorn, and they say thank you.
Well, there you go. I'll just refer to you as Jorn then. Okay. So welcome to the show, and let's just start maybe with a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you came to Viessmann and how you got to the position of president here in North America.
Yeah, I'm 54-year-old or 54-year young. I try to say is that it's very important when you get to be older than 50.
56 for me, by the way.
Okay, well, 56-year-old young.
Yes.
Yeah, so we are so I'm Norwegian. I moved here to Charlotte 3 years ago. And from Oslo, or basically that's another story. I'll tell you where I actually moved from. But and I moved with my family, my wife and my two kids. We don't have any common kids. My kids were here for the first year and a little bit more. Then they moved back to their mother in Norway, attending college and doing ending high school, and hopefully, at least my youngest one wants to come back because he plays American football. Yeah, so we live here in Charlotte and really enjoy it. I'm educated as a Master of Science degree from the University of Norway. And then I did an MBA and did the normal thing. And so I started, but I never really worked as an engineer. I've been in sales management and management my whole career. And I think I managed a couple of projects early on in my career, and they probably decided that was not my strength. So very fast came into sales and sales management.
Okay.
I've been with Viessmann since 2017 now. I had a year off where I sailed actually. So I sailed from Norway to the US, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, with my family. So we on my own sailboat.
How big was the sailboat?
It's 46 feet. So it was Chanel Sun Odyssey. We had it for years. So I was in Viessmann in Norway, managing Northwest Europe. I was having all the sales and sales service entities in the Northwest Europe hemisphere. Then, yeah, we always had a dream to actually circumnavigate, but at least to sail long. We've been sailors most of our lives. And yeah, we inherited some money and we decided we wanted to do that now before we got too old. It fit. I actually quit my job. I didn't get a year off or something. I quit my job and we basically sold our house and started sailing. And we didn't plan for the pandemic, to put it like that.
Okay. So how long did it take you? Like, what were the months that you were on the sea?
Yeah, so we sailed down from Norway and we started in July, or end of June 2020. It looked like the pandemic was going to go over, like it was like just a short-term thing. And everything opened up and we started sailing down Europe through the English Channel. And basically every time we left the country, it closed down again. We kind of saw COVID flaring up. And but we were still happy sailing down. It was actually better to be on a boat than anywhere else in COVID because we could do something, right? Everybody else was inside.
Right.
We sailed to the Canary Islands, down to Cape Verde, and then the longest stretch was the crossing to the Caribbean. It was a two-week stretch without seeing. It's just a normal kind of timeline to do that. And then we came to the Caribbean, and of course that was really nice. But Caribbean, especially in the north, was basically closed down. We couldn't go anywhere, so we had to choose our islands with care. Then my old boss called me and he said, "Hey, I know you're stuck over there. And we made a plan how to enter the North American market in, I would say, 2016. We had like a draft plan. And he said, well, you're on the other side of the ocean already. Why don't you stay there? And it's, of course, a simplification. But after some discussions, I agreed to take a 1-year assignment to look out, make a strategy how to build our business up in North America. Of course, driven by the change in legislation for refrigeration here and use of refrigerants, which we have done in Europe. We started more than 12 years ago, which is now coming really fast here in the US. And we decided yes, and they told me to move to Boston or to Rhode Island, and then I said yes, I'm okay. Rhode Island is great for a sailor, so why not? But then they came back and say, hey, you can basically decide anywhere, as long as it's has it's a business-friendly state, tax-wise and easy to establish. It needs to be close to an international airport, preferably with a direct flight to Frankfurt, which where we had our headquarters at that time. So we ended up in Charlotte.
Wow. Well, you couldn't sail your boat to Charlotte, and I got all kinds of questions about this trip because I got to imagine that there are lots of stories about this. I don't know, how many months was it? You started in June, but when did you get here?
Yeah, so we spent a year on the boat. And it's one of the best years of my life. I thoroughly enjoyed that. It also made me realize that I was not done. I really enjoyed doing it, but I was motivated to work. I was, to be in this retired state was not something I wanted to continue. I want to eventually go back there, but I wasn't done. I wanted to do something. It was, I need something more than only driving or sailing around, which is nice. So it was really, I charged my batteries. I got new energy after some exhausting years. We did a big turnaround in Europe. Market was challenging, and then COVID hits, and the market became extremely challenging. So it was for me personally, a good year off to spend on the boat with my family and my dear ones, and tackling totally different kind of challenges. There's a lot of challenges when you live on a sailboat, but and you're captaining it yourself. But it also made me realize that I want to go back to work. I want to do something.
Okay, so you have newfound motivation, and there's plenty of stories I want to catch up on the boat, but let's stick with the work stuff for now. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah.
So where did you park your boat well, first of all, let me say this. How did you start, how did you stay in contact? You must have had a phone, but you also must have had some internet connection that you were keeping in touch with the world.
Yeah, I mean, on a boat, what you do is when you're out on sea, outside Wi-Fi and phone connections, you have a sat phone, and you basically download weather forecasts 4 times a day, and you can send easy mails without any pictures, just text, letting people know you're okay, and people can mail you back with texts.
Okay.
And of course, you can call them, but on a sat phone, that's very expensive, so you try not to call too much. And of course, now Elon Musk, I love that because you get disconnected, and you feel so alone, and you feel empowered and you feel very small, but also empowered. You're in charge of your destiny.
Right.
Elon Musk has totally destroyed this with Starlink. Now you can stream movies and watch football everywhere, even up on the open sea.
Oh boy.
Which is a good thing, but I crossed the Atlantic twice on a sailboat in my career, and once on a Navy boat, or twice when I was in the Navy, and that total isolation is part of what made it magical for me.
Okay.
But when you go to an island, you're connected. So you come to any place, you you connect to. So first of all, there's restaurants everywhere. Then you try to get some password, and you anchor outside, and you connect to the Wi-Fi.
Okay.
And then you buy SIM cards with data, so you can connect.
Okay. Okay, so you've had that figured out then. All right, that worked. You were able to stay connected, and I assume that you had solar power, so you could recharge the batteries and things like that, right?
Yeah, a lot of solar power, that's clear. And of course, you need to run the engine or the genset to get more power once in a while. But yeah, we were basically solar powered.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Wow, what a story. So it was meant to be. You were coming to the U.S. and the job kind of appeared, right? I mean, at a time when you were recharged. Uh, so talk about maybe how you must have created the North American business a little bit. Is that right? I mean, or were you just kind of morphing it?
No, I mean, we didn't really have any presence here. The other division, the climate solution, the heating side was already here. Been here for 30 years.
Mm,
Uh, and it was a well-functioning organization. Didn't have any production footprint here at all. It was only sell. Everything produced in Europe came over here, sell, which is very a big limitation. So our strategy, first I worked with my European team to make a strategy, used a little, consultancy, and we made a strategy, and we were clear. We are looking for acquisitions in the space where we want to go into the more profitable part of the segment. It is the more industrial, light industrial, pharmaceutical side, and food service. We
mm,
didn't go into food retail
okay.
uh, at that point. Now everything's changed again. So, every world is evolving. Um, the reason why we went here is the AIM Act. That's basically was December 2020 was confirmed by the Congress that paces out environmental hostile HFCs until 2035, and it
Hmm.
started now. And we did this in Europe, as I said earlier. So this is kind of where using natural refrigerant, environmental friendly refrigerants for all applications is refrigeration, heat pumps, aircon. Everything's changing now. In the beginning, the U.S. industry kind of shrugged their shoulders and said, "Yeah, it's not going to happen. It's going to go away."
Hmm.
Now they realize it's going to happen, and the main reason it's happening, and this is very encouraging in the US, because the big end users, who's the biggest one that use refrigeration? It's the Walmarts, the Costco's, the Kroger's. We were in Atmosphere in 2021, Atmosphere US, and they stood up. EPA was there, and they asked, "What do we need to do to make to make you go to these solutions?" And they stood up. The technical manager said, "Just draw a line in the sand, say we can't do it because we are tired of changing our refrigeration systems every 5 years, refrigerants,
Mm,
because you make a small rule, a small change. Draw a line in the sand and keep to it, stick to it, because we want to go there. CO2, environmental friendly refrigerant, it's more energy efficient what we currently have.
mm,
We need to develop the supply chain, the competence, and everything. And there's propane is for an environmental friendly refrigerant. We know how to use ammonia, but it's too big. So that's also in the development. So what happened in the US was that the end users, the big users of the environmental hostile refrigerant, stood up and said, "What's the end game? Where can we go that invest in that doesn't require us to reinvest in 5 years?"
mm.
And that's driving this. I went to one of our partners. When I came here in 2021, 5% of the revenue was from making natural refrigerant equipment.
Mm, okay.
You know, compressor packs based on using CO2 or ammonia or propane. I was there half a year ago. Now it's 55%.
Mm, okay. Yeah.
And this is in the US, this is driven by the customers saying, "Hey, we're tired." So it's not driven by government incentives. In Europe, it's all the government incentives.
Yeah,
Here,
that's interesting. I did not know that because I was involved somewhat. I worked for a company called Airgas, and we did sell refrigerants for a period of time. And there was a slow phase out of different refrigerants. New ones were coming in, and the old ones were going up in price. I
yeah,
didn't know about this because we got out of that business probably 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. Yeah.
and now this is booming. And of course, what they do is put a limit on GVP, which is called global warming potential. And so there are a transition phase where there will be low GVP, less environmental hostile HFCs there, but it's all drifting towards natural refrigerants as the technology evolves.
Okay.
And that's the reason why we came here. That's we said, hey, we want to be part of this. It's the world's biggest market. And this is going to happen. And now it's happening in a way which I prefer because it's driven by the end customers. It's not driven by government incentives. There are incentives and there's state incentives, but it's really the end user saying we're tired of reinvesting all the time.
Okay, so you're coming into the US at a time when you have a customer or potential customer base that's very motivated, right? And they're the ones driving this. You're going to sell them the equipment to help them through this, I take it, right? So talk about how that went then. I mean, from the time that decision was made until maybe today.
Well, everything has a slow start. And of course, everything changed in our company. So I came here, we had all this really nice, 2 megabit PowerPoint strategy laid out. You knew exactly what to do. I found my advisors. We started mapping the market for acquisition targets. We made a decision. We don't think there is any chance we can be successful by manufacturing things in Europe and sending them here.
Okay.
So we looked at the heating division and say, hey, it's nice. $65 million of revenue is nice, but after 30 years, it's not that special.
Right. Yeah, it's a drop in the bucket. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So you were developing a team, you developed a sales team, and now you decided you're going to manufacture here as well. Is that right?
Yeah, no. So I was the only guy on fleet on the ground. So I looked for companies to acquire. So the first acquisition we did was BMIL Technologies in Moorhead, North Carolina.
Oh.
And they're a system integrator. We did that. It's a small company. We're going to have like $50 million in revenue this year, which is a growth. When we acquired them, they did 8. So we have almost doubled it.
Okay.
It's a very small company, but we wanted to learn about the market. We wanted to learn about the players. And we looked at, okay, this is how it works. This is how it works. Then we did our second acquisition, was a manufacturing footprint in Canada, which is Stony Creek, just outside Toronto, which makes panels and walk-ins. And of course, now we did our third acquisition. This is KPS Global, which is the biggest walk-in cold room manufacturer in the US, which is now in for antitrust consideration. So we will close probably, hopefully, end of this month or at least before November 1st.
Okay.
So we decided to transfer know-how, but manufacture locally. And we think that's the success factor for us.
Okay. And by acquiring, instead of trying to start greenfield, you gained a lot of probably relationships, knowledge of the markets, existing products or services, I guess. I mean, was that the decision, to do it that way?
And we also looked at some of our European competitors that did full greenfield. One of them has been here, and I don't want to mention by name, but they've been here for almost 20 years now, and they're doing peanuts because they came in totally greenfield, didn't get the way to market, the sales organization, didn't have the relationship base, didn't know the market needs or who was, where to get the right influence. So we don't want to. So we probably could have made the same mistakes if we didn't look at what other people made mistakes. You need to learn from other people's mistakes.
Yes.
So far, I would say we've been quite successful in this, and I truly believe sales business is done a bit different in the US than it is in Europe. It's much more relationship based here. Long-term customer relations, especially in those more mature industries that we are in. And it's not something you easily can turn over by just being slightly cheaper.
Right.
You need to build up trust. You need to build up the relationship. And it's much easier to do that by making an acquisition because you get the whole cake and work from inside out, like rather than just coming in with a bulldozer saying, I want to do this.
Right. The relationship. Yeah, the relationship has already been developed in a lot of cases, right? There is goodwill that you're buying into that is real and material, I would say, in the business.
Yeah. And it also strikes me because in Europe, oh, everything is so big in the US and the market is so big, you just go in and get like a $10 million business. That takes nothing. It takes a lot of effort. And you go to any conference in the refrigeration industry, for example, I mean, now, is that, yeah, it's the biggest market in the world, but you meet the same people every time. It's not that many. Let's say it's 250 people are the big decision makers in our markets.
Yeah,
So
I believe it. Yeah.
yeah. So it's quite consolidated, and you can't expect like a European to just walk into this market and think everyone's going to listen to you. They won't.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, we wouldn't listen to anybody just walking into our markets in Europe either. You need to adapt to the local and to how business is done. And at least that's our thinking, and we believe that we have proof of it.
Yeah. I had someone on who is from India and actually has a office and is headquartered here in Charlotte, and he was saying something very similar because he was from India, didn't know the culture, but came here, and his biggest advice was get to know the culture, be part of it, right? If you're into sports, make sure you're into sports that are local to this market, right? You can't talk about soccer if it's not really local here in Charlotte, but it's no different for every part of business, frankly. So I think that's smart.
Yeah. I think so. And I think that guy's right on it. So yeah. And I think a Norwegian fit very nicely into the US. So we're a small country, positively perceived by most people. And even the prior president liked Norway. So that's all good. And it's a good thing to be Norwegian in the US right now, because everybody watch Vikings on Netflix and talk about, hey, it's a full Netflix series where the only fight being to become the king of Norway. And we have Victor Hovland in golf and Casper Ruud in tennis, and of course in skiing we're really good. Yeah, I think I fit quite well in here as well.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Well, talk about you personally over the last 4 years or so. How you said you were motivated to get back to work. I mean, are you still feeling that? Are you enjoying kind of this change back to business that you made?
Yeah, I did. Of course, there's frustrations in every day when you do so, but yeah, I'm really motivated. I think doing business here in the US is fun. It's more fun than I expected, because you make decisions fast. You don't you take a good discussion, you make decisions. Sometimes you fail, and then you just change the decision back and do something else. BMI Aalefjær acquired. It's an amazing company, and I love working with them. Toronto also, I mean, that's Canadians. Canadians is more European, and I think they would benefit from adapting more from the US business attitude, to be quite honest. So I see both worlds in my current state. So, but yeah, I'm still very motivated. And I see how the market moves here. It's more rapid. It's more. If you need something developed, you look at it, we have meetings, we engineer the solutions, and we get it going, and we go to a partner and we get it produced. I can tell you in Germany, we need 15 meetings just to agree on what we want to do. We don't have that here. So I think it's really nice to be here learning about the totally different attitude to business.
Yeah. It's interesting as I look back on my career, Jorn. I worked for a Swedish company for many years, a company called Agagas. Maybe you recognize that name. I mean,
and then you need consensus about everything in a Swedish company.
Well, yeah, and I was in the U.S., but I did get a chance to kind of work with different subsidiaries around the world. So that was interesting and eye-opening. We didn't have the 4 to 6 week vacation in the summer. That was probably the thing that stood out most to folks, right? I mean, that's kind of a European thing, a Scandinavian thing. But then we were acquired. I worked for a company that was acquired by a French company, and the culture is just so different in different places, right? I mean, because the values. The philosophy on how to run a business, I mean, is just so different. And I was used to an American company, and it was so apparent to me. You mentioned a few things: move quickly, right? Quick to act, change the markets. Let's not spend too much time, doing some things, but let's have some fun along the way. And more importantly, we're all focused on results. And maybe maybe that's part of the work ethic we have. I mean, because it is strong here in the U.S. We have many workaholics. I think that's part of the culture a little bit too. I don't know if you've come across that.
Oh, definitely. And sometimes maybe too much even. That's probably something US could learn a bit from Europe, that, business doesn't really hurt if you can take some time off. I say there's only one place in the world that's filled up with irreplaceable people, and that's the graveyard. So, and you don't want to be there.
Right.
You can always be replaced. You can always find something to help you out. I think that's maybe one of the things that, being able to take more PTO and really let people have PTO rather than expect them to be on the mail every time. I think that's maybe one of the things that we could learn here in the US from Europe.
Okay. Did you bring that to your business and your team here?
I try. I try to encourage we only, especially people because I find people extremely dedicated to their work.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to say, hey, try basically, I don't expect you to answer this mail. When I wrote them a mail, I said, I know you're on PTO, don't answer this mail.
I'm just getting it off my plate so it's there when you get back, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I don't think I'm a workaholic, but I'm always reading my mail, and I feel I to stay on top of things. But yeah, the work ethic is different. But you can't say European is the same. I find being an international manager in Europe for many years, I find every European country to be different as well.
Ah, that's interesting. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
in the US, people say Europeans, but I can tell you, the Europeans are not Europeans. Germany, France, Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, it's very different. And it's really a big, both work ethics, time management, leadership styles are very different in all these countries.
I got a chance to talk a little bit with someone I was working close with who came here from Belarus, and his company he's trying to break into the U.S. market, but most of his it's a technology company. Most of his workers are in Poland, and the leadership style required for those workers, as he was explaining to me, is totally different than something I had ever experienced. So I guess that's interesting. I mean, so for you had exposure to many different markets and businesses around the world. That's fun.
Yeah.
But
It is, and you see those different leadership styles, and essentially, like Eastern European leadership style, it does not work in the US
yeah, I believe that
or in
based off what he
Canada.
told me.
You need to take and say, hey, okay, this is how, you know, Eastern European leadership style is because it's a tradition. It's embedded. It's like it's a top down. People, manager in Eastern Europe tells you what to do. They expect people to do exactly what they tell them to.
Right, right. That's
So
what he explained to me.
definitely, yeah.
And it's so different than here, right? We tend to give a little bit more autonomy to folks and allow them a little bit of leeway to do something maybe the way they would do it.
Yes. So it's a very different culture, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you say you've had fun though with this market because it moves a little quicker. Is that the main reason why, or are there other reasons as well?
Well, there are main reasons because business are people and people are business. So I mean, I meet so many fun people here. Especially it started with BMIL. I learned more about my industry working with BMIL for 2 years than I've done for 5 years in Europe, to be honest. It's because of competence that's there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really good. It's the people that are there. I meet people. So in the US, in Europe, we all go in gray suits and blue shirts. We like here. In the US, you go and meet and you expect to find, you're going to meet a consultant that's really a very important consultant for a big end user. And he shows up in a white shirt and dirty jeans. And you're like, that wouldn't happen in Europe. It happens here. It's a culture thing. People, yeah. So of course I had to adapt. I take off my suit. I haven't worn a suit since I came here,
Right.
unless it's a formal thing. And I wear a shirt when I have meetings with people in Europe because I need to look at least on the top that they don't see that I wear shorts below.
Right. Right.
So it's. I also think this is fun. It's much more. People are grounded in a way not necessarily especially in Europe, Central Europe, Germany, France, those more bigger economies with much family-owned companies, they're very formal. Informality here. I think it was a difficult way to say I like the informality. The more.
Yeah, and I think that's changed too over time, Jørn. I would say that even in my career, I wore a tie all the time in the beginning, and I would think in the last maybe 5 or 10 years, there's been a real change towards more casual workplace. Started on Casual Friday. It's become more casual all over the place, and then you have the virtual aspect that you mentioned, and that's at a whole new dimension. To kind of work in the U.S. now.
Yeah. I agree, and sometimes maybe it's a bit too much. I don't know, but yeah, but it's different. I think I enjoy the difference. Still like to, and I travel back and forth, right? I attend European meetings, business meetings. I attend meetings here, so yeah, and of course, the economy here in the U.S. is so much better than the market and the economy in Europe. Being I don't have a horse in the race in the election here because I'm a foreigner. But looking at all of the discussion about the economy, I think people need to realize that the economy here in the US is the best in the world.
Right.
It's not bad. You can always make it better. You can always say they made mistakes in that, but the inflation, you're not even top 20.
Yeah, right. But compared to what we were, that's what everybody's thinking, right? I mean, it's like, oh my gosh. And even, compared to 30 years ago, it was horrible then at that time, or 40 years ago, I guess probably would have been the time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's a global economy, right? Politicians in any country will try to say that our actions did all these wonderful things and their actions destroyed. It's a global. That's how politicians work, regardless where you are. However, the economy is a global thing. There's very local changes and politicians and everything that act responsibly can influence it. But, if Europe has an average inflation of 15 to 20%, it's going to smith over here because we are all linked.
Yeah, much more than we were in the past. I agree. Yeah.
And that's normally a good thing to be linked. Protectionism has never proved to be a good thing.
No.
But that's now we're in politics. We shouldn't talk about
that. Well, Jørn, let me switch gears here a little bit. Let's talk maybe a little bit about, for you personally and for the business, what are your aspirations over the next 5 years?
Well, for the next 5 years, for the business, I would like to, first of all, grow the industrial side of it. I mean, we just acquired the market leader in the food retail walk-in segment, and I can't really talk with them or talk as much about it yet. But I mean, that needs to prosper, and we need to look into how we can grow that. But I would really like to see the growth and the success we have in the industrial side that we just started to scratch on surface on. And I mean, we are double the revenue in 2 years in just basically doing East Coast based projects. I mean, there's a huge market on the other side of the coast that we haven't dipped our toes into yet. Right. And that's where we are working right now, how to scale this organically and inorganically. That's really my biggest ambition right now, is to scale this, because it's has still a nice profitability. It has customers that value the offerings. We are important for their customers, for their process, which is and they have needs that but you can't just take products off the shelf and say this is what you need. You need to do some engineering. There needs to be some value add to it. So in a 5-year scope, that's really what I would like to see. I would like to grow this into a business of, at least I would like to be 100 million sides of this when we get there in 5 years. So hopefully before. I really have ambitions to do it earlier.
Okay.
My personal side, I'm waiting for my green card to be approved. That's a long process. I thought it's going to be quite easy, but it's an average processing time of 30 months here in North Carolina. So that's a long process. Okay. So that's good. And I like it in Charlotte. We really enjoy living here. So we probably would like to stay here. It's very efficient traveling here, and there's direct flights to anywhere. And climate is usually quite, it's been a bit more raining this year than last year, but climate is nice.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. We don't get a lot of snow. It's not real cold. Not a lot of snow skiing around here. That's for sure.
So, but I'm, everybody asks me, don't you miss skiing? Well, I do, but I like to travel to snow. I don't like to be shoveling snow.
Yes. Yes. You can fly to, Utah or Colorado or, get world-class skiing there, right?
Yeah, you can just, you can drive 2 hours and go to Boone and you can go skiing in the wintertime. So
You could. Yeah. I don't know. What is the skiing like there? I can't imagine it's,
I haven't
comparable.
done it yet, but they have snow.
They have snow, right? Okay, they have snow. Well, how about sailing? I mean, you got a couple decent lakes here. It's probably not known for sailing, but boating maybe a little. Have you done boating?
I've been with a couple of, I still play hockey. So I have some hockey friends that has boats there. So I've been with them on the lakes. It's
Okay.
really nice. There's even sailboats, small sailboats up in not Wiley, but the other lake.
Lake Norman. Yep.
Norman, yeah, there's sailboats there. Not big, but yeah. Sailing on the lake is not my favorite, but I like to be on the lake.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We have friends with sailboats that has sailboats in Charleston, so we can go sailing with them. So yeah. But yeah, the only thing I miss in Charlotte is the sea. I really miss that.
Yeah.
And that's also show a difference in European attitude towards use because people say, but you're so close to the sea, you can just drive there. And it's like, yeah, it's a 3-4 hour drive. For me, that's not close. I used to live 15 minutes from my boat.
There you go. So you could be out
Yeah.
there all the time and just watching the waves, which is, at least for me, it's therapeutic. I'm sure it's more so for you. It sounds like you've grown up with that. Yeah.
For me, it's like being close to the water has always been something that's important. So that's the one thing I miss.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good. Good luck with that over the next 5 years. So you've talked a little bit about the changing markets, and you've talked about your acquisitions, but maybe talk about some of the biggest challenges you have in the business today.
Yeah, the challenges I have in the business today. First of all, we have Viessmann has changed a lot. So to understand how our new group is going to look like, that's a big challenge. I think we are trying to find ourselves again in a whole new structure. My boss that hired me and rehired me, he left.
Mhm.
Uh, and I mean, I worked with him for many years. I do miss him and the discussions I could have with him. I have a new boss that came in. He's there on an interim basis. He's a great guy. Of course, we haven't developed that kind of relationship yet, but hopefully we will.
Mhm.
Uh, but then, of course, he's also on the other side of the ocean, so we don't speak every day.
Yeah. Right.
And we are doing well here in the US, so we are not his top priority, which I guess is good. Uh,
Mhm.
but so that's maybe my current challenge in the business today. And of course, now I'm working on how scaling up is. How do we scale this? How do we get to the
Mhm.
next level? That's something I'm really working on, and um, to find out what's the next 10 steps we're going to do here in the US to get to the $100 million level, which I talked about.
Mhm. Mhm.
I think that's my two biggest challenges now at this point. But yeah, you need challenges, otherwise it would be too easy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, you didn't mention integration of the acquisition. Now, it might be a little too advanced, or too soon to talk about that. But do you view integrating companies, into the business as a challenge, or has that gone relatively smoothly for you?
So when I say it's gone relatively smoothly, maybe some of my colleagues that listen to that will say, "Hey, I differ."
Right.
Uh, but yeah, relatively, we haven't integrated much yet. We are
Okay.
Viessmann always careful about integrating too much because if you focus so much on integration, a lot of the value you acquired can be lost. So we are making sure all the value of the company, brand, people, business practices, we take care of that and make sure how we fit this into our world. So far, it's basically been on the finance side and on HR side, we just make sure people are well and that we pay everything, and corporate governance side. we haven't really streamlined business processes because we find them to be different.
Okay.
We need so it's gone smoothly because we haven't integrated heavily. It's basically been on the reporting side.
I see.
And that seems to be also the future of our group, because now we are moving from being a industrial player, big industrial player, to be more like a family-owned investment company that's going to do a lot of acquisitions, and we will find synergies, but it looks like most of the acquisitions will be on their own and not heavily integrated.
I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can see that maybe it isn't quite as hard of a task, because in some businesses where you're buying companies that are similar and integrating them into an existing business, that is difficult. It's a whole different ballgame.
And I've done that, and honestly, the biggest challenge is culture. If culture doesn't fit, it's a nightmare. You can find products fit, all that, but if the culture of the company is totally different from what you try to make it to be, it's a big challenge. So we have all tried and failed and tried and succeeded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're probably developing a culture that you'd like here. You mentioned some of the kind of characteristics of it. So if you were advising a new CEO or new executive, that had to build a new team, new high performing team, what would you say to them?
Here in the US or?
Here in the US, yeah.
Yes. Well, first of all, hire people that are better than you. Don't feel threatened if people are, by hiring really high performing people. I think somebody said if you're the smartest guy in the room isn't big enough, or there's not enough people in the room.
Yeah.
I think that's really a success factor. Try to find people that challenge you. And this is universal. Try to find people that are not like you. Try to find a team that's not homogeneous. You need to have a diversified team in there. Then this is where I like a leadership style, which is I don't like to micromanage. I like to have people, and I think one of the success factors is to allow people to do their thing. KPIs, agree on KPIs, agree on measurements, agree on what's the success and what you want to achieve. Of course, there's always a frame on what you do and what you don't do on the ethics side and everything. But then I like to let people run with it and do their thing. I always tell my people, if I start micromanaging, it's not a good sign. That's
right.
really a thing. I talk to people. That's always said. I think management by walking around, management by talking to people and encouraging people and listening is undervalued. You can go to so many conferences and business schools and learn about the latest things in leadership styles and strategies and everything. And when you've been around for a while, like we have, it boils down to there's good things to learn, always learn, but it's a bit the same, same shit, new wrapping kind of attitude. There's the core is still there. You need to manage people, talk to people, and get them to perform.
Yeah.
And I like to do that. I like to talk to people. I like to listen. And a lot of people's frustrations is vented out just by listening to them. Understand what makes them tick. So, find teams, find people that are better than you, find people that are different than you, and and that can work independently, and let them be themselves. If you hire somebody that's strong-willed and really is successful, and you think you can mold that people into being a totally different person, it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
At times they have to, want to be on the team if they're not going down the same path, because that'll be very apparent. But you mentioned something interesting now, especially in today's world, because I assume the businesses you're acquiring, I think you said, none of them are in Charlotte. So when you have to connect with people today, it's a little different connecting, right? You can't just walk down the hall. So how is that going for you?
Yeah, it's I do miss the office a bit, the office environment, but of course I travel to those locations quite frequently. So that's one thing, but I do like this. I mean, the world's changed. COVID did a change to the businesses. So the current headquarters of our business is in my second floor. And I walk up there and I basically sit in front of my screen the whole day. I talk to people, and so that's 50% of my day are meetings in
Mm-hmm.
some way or context. And when I work from here, and then 50% is following up those meetings with actions and resumes and whatever has to be prepared or followed up. So
Okay.
that's how I work right now. We are planning to build or to get a Charlotte office. It's been on the roadmap for quite a long time. And I haven't executed because every time we're ready to execute, something has happened on our mothership that says, "Oh, wait a bit," and then of course we're working on an acquisition pipeline
Mm-hmm.
that could have changed also where we put things. So I'm still here in my second floor talking to people.
Yeah, yeah, it probably hasn't been as big a priority because you can do it very well this way now. Because I don't know about you, before you went on this sailing trip, how was the virtual interaction with people then for you?
I mean, the virtual interaction was, I wouldn't say non-existent, but it was basically limited to business reviews and meetings with management somewhere. And we went from having conference calls to be having Google Meets or Teams meeting or whatever
Mm,
platform we used. Then COVID hit, and within months, the technology and everything changes, and you realize, hey, this works as well somehow.
yeah, right.
And it never turned back. So we are still doing it, and I think this is a good thing. However, I do what I miss when I'm here. If I'm here more than 2 weeks, not traveling, I miss people.
Yeah,
I'm an extrovert by nature, and I love my neighbors. But in the business that I would like to talk to people I do business with. So I get a bit restless sometimes, and then I book a flight and go there.
there you go. Yeah, okay. Then you can fill that need. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I had a similar experience. I went from conference calls to video calls, and when we transitioned to video calls, there was a time when people didn't have their cameras on. They weren't ready for this kind of situation. But now it's interesting to me as I talk to businesses that are 100% virtual and how
Yeah.
they stay connected, and they found a way to do it. They found a way to stay connected with all their people in a very engaging way. I mean, where it's natural for all of them. So I think it's this evolution is interesting. I think it's more efficient in a lot of ways, and provides flexibility that we never had, and including you. You probably never would have been able to do this, without an office here prior to today.
Yeah, and I discovered, so, and this is an interesting story. So when I got before we acquired BMIL, I learned to load the CEO of BMIL and owner at that point. And when COVID hits, he's a guy who loves to be on the road.
Mm,
He's a force. I never met a guy that enthusiastic about his work in the refrigeration as much as Thomas is called.
hmm.
And when COVID hits, he didn't want to fly, and he doesn't really like flying. He prefers driving. So he hired a driver to drive his car, and he made his office in the back seat. So when he was not at the office, he was traveling.
Wow.
And I before we acquired them, I hitched a ride with him from Washington because there was a bad weather storm. They drove me from Washington down here to Charlotte, and I witnessed this. So he has like a whole office set up in the back seat. Laptop. He had a little desk that he put on his laptop on his lap, and
Hmm.
and of course there was a couple of stretches where the coverage was slightly bad, so we couldn't do. But so he continued to do that for a long time, and it works. I called it BMIL Road Force One. It was basically.
See,
Uh,
that's interesting. And I think there's some younger generation folks that are also doing that on a different level where they have, they just have a camper or somewhere else, in a unique place they want to live, and they work from there. And I think
yeah.
this has kind of allowed kind of that kind of different kind of way to approach business, it's interesting. It might keep some of us more interested for a longer period of time as well. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean now whenever you're traveling, you see people with AirPods or their headphones on, having meetings and discussions all over the airport or wherever you are, and
Hmm.
even in the parks, you see people doing business, right?
Oh yeah.
It's a good thing. What I find very strange here, and this is a US thing, people talk about anything, anywhere, without regard who's listening.
Ah, okay.
That's a big change towards Europe. And even they they don't even use their earphones. You sit on watching TV on their handheld or on the phones, or having conversations, quite intimate conversation with the family in an airport where everybody listens in. I'm like, and that's also a cultural thing that would never happen in Europe, I would say.
No. Okay. Yeah, and I think I don't see that often. I don't look for it. Maybe I'm more like you would be. I probably would keep those things in a closed door or somewhere where everybody
Yeah,
doesn't listen. But you made me think of something. Have you ever heard of the name John Madden?
yeah. The football, yeah,
He was a American football coach, and then he was
yeah,
a commentator. And he didn't like to fly, but his office was basically, it was an RV, and he traveled around the U.S. and he was known for stopping into towns and meeting the people and experiencing the food, and that's how he got to the games.
yeah,
But he was an early version of, I guess, the Road Warrior.
yeah. No, yeah. No, but it's. I think we just need to realize that the world changed, and it's not going to change back. You're going to, we still have offices still, but salespeople are basically better off if they're good being on the road,
Mm-hmm.
being because they don't need to. You need to have them in the office every day. You never had, but now it's much easier for them to be remote. It's much
Right.
easier to hire people remotely
Mm-hmm.
because you send them a laptop and a connection and tell them how you connect securely, and they're there. You can dip into pools of competence you couldn't attract earlier because they were so too far away. Now you
Right.
can,
Right.
which is big change.
Yeah, it's a flexible thing, and adapting. I think you made that point earlier. I think we have to adapt in many ways in business, and this is just one of them. Now,
Yeah.
let me ask you something. You look at this as a good thing. At least that's what we've talked about so far. Some people see this as a potential problem as well, right? Where you give somebody too much autonomy. Talk about that, if you would, from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, some people exploit it for sure, you
Hmm.
know, and but you kind of know this. So yes, it's a bad thing because some people basically exploit it. They don't do the work. They appear to be working, or they're not where they say they are. Uh,
Hmm.
it's this is a trust issue.
Hmm.
People can, and I've seen both examples. So you need to, to have people working remotely doesn't, as a manager, it's more challenging because you need to trust them and you need to make sure you don't know if they're at the office because you can't see. I can always blur my background or put on a picture. It looks like I'm everywhere, anywhere.
Right.
Um, so, but yeah, there are challenges, but we cannot go backwards into the future. This has happened. This is
Hmm.
you just need to embrace it and find out how it works because all the opportunities it gives outweighs those negatives, in my opinion. Um, and at the same time, you just need to be. Some people cannot do it, and you'll find those eventually.
Yeah, and I think those kind of people, if they were in an office, they probably weren't getting where they weren't as productive as they could have been there either, right? So I think you're always going to have that mix of people you got to manage a little differently. But yeah, I'm
Yeah,
with you. I kind of felt like during COVID that our team was very productive, and I there was lots of evidence of it, that they were more productive in some ways, and it gave them flexibility. But there were other parts of the company where that wasn't the view. I just thought that was interesting as we talked about it. So,
it
okay,
is.
so we're getting close on our time,
Yeah.
Jorn. I want so one more question for you. You've talked a lot about kind of some things with you personally, and changes and reasons why you came back. But talk about maybe what you've learned about yourself since coming back to work, but maybe also just before you went on this sailing trip. Okay.
Yeah. So I can tell you. So we had a rough process in Europe before I left for the sailing. It was a turnaround. It's always like this. You agree with something that happens and you disagree with some of the strategy, and you think, oh, this is a mistake, we should go somewhere else. So I probably was at the point where I needed a break. I
Mm,
saw we had done a lot of good, and then I saw COVID all of a sudden hit. And I didn't plan for that to come when I'd made the decision, but I also see that reversing a lot of the good we did. Um, so I was very focused. I was dedicated. Um, I didn't have, I got a new horizon when I did this year off. So as a leader, I think I developed into a more mature place. I still talk a lot. I know that's my nature. I'm really thoroughly think I'm a better listener now than I was before.
Mm.
A guy once told me there's a reason you have one mouth and two ears. You should listen twice as much as you speak.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm more perceptive to people's needs and their stories now than I was.
Okay.
So I think I developed into, I guess, more mature. Is one way to put it, but also getting a bigger picture, seeing the more of the bigger picture clear. That's something I, as a leader, at least hope I have developed. I really think so. I think I've always been a leader, a kind of leader. I think most people like me. I've hired people, I had difficult employees, and I've remained friends with them after I left or changed my position. Um, I think I'm better at making difficult decisions now than I was. I'm a more analytical approach to it.
Okay. Okay.
And that's maybe also because I have a little more, my role is different. I have a little distance to it.
Okay.
It's easier to see it in a helicopter perspective rather than if you're too close, you're kind of, yeah.
Do you think the break, the time off you had, do you think that's what kind of drove some of these changes, these positive, or this maturity maybe that you're describing?
I think so.
You think so?
I
Okay.
think the break was very healthy for me and my motivation. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think I also dare I'm a bit more daring in telling when I think we're doing the wrong thing, also upwards to say I don't agree with this.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been a yes man. I can think my boss that left, he can probably say that I wasn't always the most easy guy when I disagreed, but I think I'm able to communicate that I think there's another way to do this in a more less emotional way than I maybe was earlier.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good. Yeah.
But yeah, I really think the break was good for me. I think a lot of people could benefit from this if they feel they're stuck or if they feel uh, uh, you know, they're not motivated the same way they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Everybody has their own journey and their own experience. Not everybody needs to go sailing for a year, but to take a break and get a new perspective of things,
Mm-hmm.
realize that, hey, I'm not done. I want to do something. I'm motivated again. Um, I think a lot of people could benefit from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in the US, it's interesting. My daughter works for a company, the US based, and she's in England now, but they give a sabbatical after 5 years, which is like a month long, and they have to be unplugged. There's not many times, I think, in most US people's career where they've been able to take a month off. Now, in Europe, it's a little different, and it's not a year, but it would be helpful, I think, to your point. You would recommend that, right?
Yeah, I would. I don't want all my managers coming to me and say, hey, I want a year off right now after listening to this podcast. But yeah, I think it's beneficial if you feel you're stuck, if you
Hmm.
feel the motivation lack. And I would encourage people to, talk to your boss, explain and see this is what I want to do, because then it gets less dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because and then maybe it can fit and you can get some help, and maybe it's not a year, maybe it's a month, maybe it's 2 months, but maybe there's an opening in somewhere else that could remotivate you in a different way.
Hmm.
uh, I think people are afraid to talk about these things with the bosses,
Hmm.
and I think it would be beneficial to be open about it, because it's you can always create a win-win situation in most
Hmm.
cases.
As
Yeah.
long as you're talking about it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you spring it on people, it's more difficult.
Yeah. And as a boss, I mean, what would you recommend? Would you say maybe preempt that and encourage people to talk about it? Is that how you maybe do it for folks that don't want to bring this up with their boss?
Yeah. So what I do is I talk about my journey, my sailing. I talk about it and I explain why I did it and that I what was my experience, that I came back remotivated. That encourages people, in my experience, that they start talking about their own dreams and their own ambitions. That's everything from, you know, planning your retirement in Florida to want to go for a winter being a ski bum in Austria or in Aspen. It's, you know, how people have different interests and different thing, and sometimes it's motivating just talking about them and saying, you know, and some things you should do before you're too old.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, Jorn, I got to tell you, I mean, I said to you before the podcast that I really enjoy talking to interesting people, and you are very interesting. And I'd love to hear more about the boating trip sometime. And I'm sure some of the audience might. So maybe let's just reserve a future date. Maybe we can do another podcast. How's that?
That sounds good. Perfect. I'm here.
Okay. Well, look, thank you very much for joining. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.